Hi, my name is Liz, and we are at EMO's Creative Studio, where anything you create is beautiful because you created it. Today's video tutorial, we're going to be making a small crossbody bag, good for evening, good to use when you are at a location where there's a lot of people and you want to watch your bag and your stuff and your wallet. Big enough to carry a wallet, cell phone, packet of Kleenex, and maybe a pair of glasses, your lipstick. Has a lot of room even though it looks small. It has a hook and loop closure, as you can see right here. Nice roomy pocket, and it has an outside zipper pocket right here. Really nice little zipper pocket. Final measurements on this is 7 inches across, 7.5 inches up and down. This particular strap is about 54 inches. It's good enough for me. You can make your strap longer, smaller, depending on what size you are. So, let's get started. The items needed to complete this bag are as follows. I have 2 pieces of material. This one is for the liner. This one is for the outside. They both measure 8 inches across, 18 inches long. This one. And I have a foam interfacing, which is also cut out to 8 inches wide and 18 inches long. I have a piece of fabric which is about 58 inches long by 3 inches wide, and I'm going to use this for my strap. I have 2 pieces of gross grain ribbon to attach my pocket to the outside. And to make the outside pocket, I have 4 pieces of fabric. Now I'm going to use the liner for the inside of the pocket and the outside of the fabric, outside fabric for the outside of the pocket. This particular set is 2 inches by 8 inches, and this one, which is I've already started by connecting it to the zipper, is 8 inches by 4 inches, and then I have a 9-inch zipper. The first thing I'm going to do is put my zipper together. I've already started the process with the 4 inches by 8 inches, and what I've done is I've sewn it to one side of the zipper. So let me show you how I'm going to do that. You have your bottom part or your top part of your zipper pocket, and you're going to put the right side of your outside zip pocket to the right side of your zipper. Then you're going to take your right side of your lining and put it on the wrong side of your zipper. What you want to make sure is that you're matching up the edges so that you don't have a crooked looking zipper. Now you know I don't like to use pins, so I'm going to go ahead and do this using my quilting clips. Let me get a few and I'll show you how I'm going to do that. Let's see. Again, right side of the outside of the pocket to the right side of the zipper. Right side of the inside of the pocket to the back side of the zipper. Making sure that all of the edges are equal. Nothing is going to overlap or hang out or show. So, gotta take your time when you're doing this. This is probably going to be the more difficult part of making this bag. The more time consuming. I'm actually going to use pins for this. Let me just lay this down. Let me just reposition everything all over again because I feel like I'm all messed up here. Do this so that we can all see it. There's that. This goes on top. Gotta make sure that it's all equal and even. I'll get my pins and I'll actually pin it on the opposite end of where I'm going to sew. And when I sew it, I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. If you're an experienced sewer, you don't have to change your, if you are using a small foot on your machine, you don't necessarily have to change to a zipper foot. I am still currently using my walking foot, and it has a small enough space that I don't need to change it to my zipper foot. Alright, I think I got it all pinned properly. And now it's got all 3 edges, layers are sandwiched together properly. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sew down about a 1/4 inch seam allowance on this. Once I'm done doing that, I'll come back. I decided I would show you how I was going to sew this on. I'm still using my walking foot, as you can see here, and I have it to, I have the edge of my fabric and zipper at the edge of the zipper foot, which gives me about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now I'm going to go ahead and sew, and I'm not going to be worried that it's going to be sewing on top of the zipper. Keep on sewing, 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 sewing. I don't have to worry about removing pins or anything. I'm going to keep on sewing. I'm going to keep on sewing. And I'm getting close to the zipper head. At this point, I can remove all my pins if I want. My needle is in the down position. I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to open my zipper so that I don't get the zipper head caught when I am sewing my pieces together. You have to be real careful with this. You may have to lift your lever and open your zipper. Now when you do that, you no longer have pins on your fabric, so you got to be really careful that you have everything in its place. I got everything in its place. I'm hoping that everything is equal and even, and I'm going to continue sewing, and I'm done. So let's see, was I successful? Let's see, let's go ahead and close up the zipper. Pretty close. Now that I've ironed everything and pressed it with a nice crease, I'm going to go ahead and put in a really nice top stitch. I'm going to move my thread length to 3. I'm going to put the edge of my zipper foot to the edge of the folded fabric, and I'm not going to back stitch because everything will be secured once I put everything together. Go ahead and sew. And we're sewing all the way to the end. Lift it, pull it out just a little bit, and now I'm going to do the other side. I don't have to cut the thread yet, I'll cut it later. Go ahead and sew. Alright, I've completed my top stitching. See how it looks right there? Nice top stitching on both sides. Let me go ahead and replace my stitching to 2.5 so I can continue stitching, and I'm going to move to the... I've completed making the pocket. It has a row on each side of the zipper of top stitching, and it's nicely pressed, so I'm going to go ahead and put this to the side. Next thing I'm going to work on is the strap. This fabric, it's 2 pieces sewn together. I didn't do it at an angle, I did a straight stitch. It'll do for what I'm doing. I also placed a very lightweight interfacing, iron-on interfacing to the back to give it a little bit of stability. What I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to fold it in half, right sides together. And I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch stitching across here. Make sure I back stitch it to keep the stitching from pulling, and then straight down all the way to the other end. If I didn't say, I think this piece of fabric is about 57 inches long. It'll give me a nice length of strap to use as for a crossbody. So, sorry, I'm just picking threads. So let me go ahead and sew this. Let's go to the machine. I'm not going to put any pins into this because I'm pretty confident that I'll be able to sew this, fold it in half and sew it straight. If you are still learning how to sew and you feel that you need to put some pins in, go ahead and fold it right sides together and place a pin every so often to keep your fabric put together, but make sure to pull those pins out as you're sewing. Let me demonstrate here. Let me put a pin one or two places so that you can see what I'm talking about. Throw in one more pin. I've got my fabric butted up up to the needle. I'm going to sew it, giving it a 1/4 inch seam allowance, as you can see right here. All right, hopefully you can see that a little bit better. I am going to tack down a couple of stitches, back stitch it to lock that stitch. I'm going to sew till I get to this line right here, which is my 1/4 inch indication. Hand twirl it one more time. Now, this machine only gives me a 1/4 inch delineation of stitching when I'm stitching to know where to stop. What I went ahead and did was I scratched in at a 1/2 inch. So this is a 1/4 inch, and this one, if you could see it, is at a 1/2 inch. Alright, I've reached my 1/4 inch. I'm going to lift my lever. I'm going to turn my fabric, and my fabric edge is at the edge of the foot, and I'm going to go ahead and continue sewing. Continue sewing. And get to my pin, pull it out. I don't want to sew so fast that I sew over the pin. Some machines cannot sew over the pin, and my pins are thick, so I don't want the pin to break as the needle is going over it, or my needle to break. So that's why you need to pull out your pins. So now I'm going to show you how I do it without using pins. I've got it folded in half, making sure that I keep my fabric straight. I'll stop and fold over. I'll stop and I'll fold over like this. I'll stop and I'll fold over like this. Now you can see some of my interfacing is coming out or is extending beyond the fabric, and that's okay. I'll trim that up when I'm ready to, just before I turn this around or inside out. Now I just want to cross my seam. Fold over. Let me go ahead and fold over. I got a heavy foot, I'm sorry. I wish this machine had a button on and off. I love that type of a machine. Alright, I'm almost at the end. One more stop to fold over. Making sure I keep the edges even. And now I'm going to backstitch the end. And I'm going to clip it, and you see I've completed the stitching of the strap, putting it together. What I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and clip the corners. I'm going to clip the corners so that I get a nice crisp point when I turn it over. Please make sure when you're clipping your corners that you don't clip into the stitching, because then you'll create a hole and you'll have to pull everything apart and re-sew it. Alright, I'll come back to you after I've turned this strap inside. So now I have my strap turned inside out, and I also ironed it. What I need to, this is the sewn edge, so what I need to do is I need to tuck this in as best as I can so that when I go to the machine to top stitch it, there will not be any raw edges showing. Also, because of the interfacing that I used, and I'm sorry I don't know what kind it is, I just know that it's Pellon. I don't know the number, but I know it's used for collars and cuffs, if that helps you any with trying to figure out what kind of interface, iron-on interfacing to use, or fusible interfacing to use. It's Pellon, and I believe I read that it's what's used for collars and cuffs. It has a very nice weight. It doesn't make the strap heavy, it just gives it a nice weight so it'll hang really nicely. And once I put the top stitching on, it's even going to make it even a nicer weight for the strap. Alright, as I've got this folded as best as I can, I'm going to turn to the iron. I'm going to iron this, and then I'm going to go on the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch top stitching all the way around. Probably will move my stitch length to 3 to give it a nice look. I'll come back to you once I have this done. Okay, I have my strap. It's now stitched with the interfacing. I've gone ahead and I've top stitched it with a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around. It gives it a nice weight to it. It's not too thick, it's not too bulky, and it will be strong enough to hold up the bag. So let's put this to the side. The next thing I want to do is I want to attach my zipper to the front piece, which is this piece right here. Now this is going to be folded in thirds. The bag is going to be like something like this, with, let me put it up even a little bit more, something like this. Let's see, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Maybe something like that, where it's going to be folded over. Remember, it's going to have a 1/2 inch seam allowance, so 1/2 inch is going to disappear. So what I want to do is I want to place my pocket somewhere like this, because I'm going to put, to secure the pocket, I'm going to be using the ribbons like this and like this. So I want to make sure that everything is equal. So I'm going to take my gauge right here, and I'm going to measure exactly what the size is from one end to the other. Now I want to make sure that this is nice and even and straight. So I'm going to go ahead and put it right here, and it looks like it, sorry about my head, it looks like it's straight. So I'm going to go ahead and place it onto my bag, and I'm going to measure the distance from the fold to the edge of the pocket. And it should be this all the way across, and it's not, so I'm going to lift it up just a little. There we go. Lift it up a little. There we go. Now, of course, with these dots on the mat, it kind of gives you, makes it look like everything is lopsided. So let's go ahead and measure again. I have it at a 1 1/8, I believe. Yeah, right there, right there, right there. And now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to pin it very carefully, pocket, and through one layer of the outside. And I'll show you in just a second what I'm talking about. Okay, now I can go to the machine and I can sew on my ribbons. Now what you're trying to do is you're trying to make sure that half of the ribbon is on your fabric and half of the ribbon is on your pocket. Now I don't like pinning because it distorts, but in order to make sure that I have a nice straight piece of ribbon, I'm going to go ahead and put just 2 pins in. One here, one here. I will be taking the pins out as I'm sewing. Now I can do this for the top as well. You see how it's turning out? I'll put 1 pin here. And again, 1 pin here. Just like that. And now I can go to the machine and I can sew these ribbons on. So let's go to the machine. My needle is in the down position. I've already removed one of the pins, and what I'm trying to do is sew as close as possible to the edge of the ribbon. It'll give it a really pretty look. So what I'm doing with the foot that I have is I'm putting the edge of the grosgrain ribbon to the inside edge of the foot. Now your foot might be different, might have a different measurement than mine does. You just use your eyeball, or you eyeball it, or you put some kind of marking on your machine so that you can keep your fabric straight. Again, for my purposes, my foot, I'm going to use the edge of the grosgrain ribbon to the inside edge of my foot right here. Again, you can line it up however you have your foot. Now I'm not going to backstitch this because the seam will be set or closed up or locked in, sorry, when I put all my pieces together. So I'm not going to go fast on this because I want to make sure that I'm sewing it really even and straight, because I'm using a contrasting thread and it's going to show up. I like using contrasting thread because it gives it a little pop, gives it some character. That's why I only use this color thread, which is off-white, ecru, ivory. Now, of course, if I'm sewing on something that is black, which you saw in my sample, I will use the black thread because white would be, it'll mess it up. It'll be too crazy, and I wanted that black bag to be a little bit more elegant looking, and I'll show you the example once I'm done. Alright, I turned it around. I didn't cut the thread. I want to make sure that my pocket is underneath my grosgrain ribbon. I've removed all the pins so that I can sew without any distraction. I'm sewing slowly, keeping my eye on what I'm sewing to make sure that I'm doing a good job, and I have a somewhat straight line. Alright, as you can see here, this is how it's turned out. It looks really cute with that contrasting thread right here. Let's see if I can give you a close-up. Give you a close-up. There you go. Now you can see it. Really cute right there. There you go. It's even better close-up. All right, I'm going to pull this out and I'm going to sew the other side. As you can see, my pocket popped out, so I'm going to fix that and I'm going to sew it. Let me pull out a pin so I can get the pocket underneath the ribbon, because that is one of the more important things to do. Make sure that pocket is nice and firmly attached under your ribbon. Now, I personally don't use pins when I'm doing this because, as you saw, the pocket popped out. I just make sure, use eyeballing it, that I have a nice straight ribbon. Now again, it's going to take practice. I'm not saying that you have to do it like this, but Another thing that you can do is, if you're not comfortable using pins, you can actually take some kind of a fabric glue and run across a temporary fabric glue, a tacking glue, like this, and you can place your ribbon, and you see your ribbon won't move now. Unlike here, I can move it. Your ribbon won't move now, and you can continue sewing. So let's go ahead and do this side. And I feel a little bit more confident now that I put the glue down, that I can go a little bit faster and the ribbon won't move. Now you saw that I didn't put glue all the way across, so I got to slow up a little and make sure that I'm putting this ribbon on correctly. Oops, I think I just made a mistake. But hopefully it won't be so noticeable. We are at the end. Stop your machine, lift your lever, pull out the thread a little. No, it's not noticeable. Butt your fabric up to the needle and begin sewing, making sure that your ribbon is butting up to whatever item you're using as a measuring guide. And you continue sewing, and the pocket is now sewn in place. And you can see, I'm going to pull out these pins, and you can see you got a really cute pocket in place. See? Just like this. Well, it's going to be a little bit open because it's not tacked all the way down, but it's going to look very cute. All right, let's go back to the mat. I've got the pocket in place now, and let me show you what I was talking about. When I use darker fabric, I will go ahead and use the black thread. As you can see, it really came, like I showed you earlier, this bag really came out very nice. It looks more on the elegant side. It doesn't have any white stitching to throw off the pretty color combination of the golden yellow and black. All right, so now, like I said, I've attached the pocket, and now I'm ready to move on. So to make it a little bit easier for myself, what I've done is I went ahead to the iron, and I ironed in folds for the bottom of the purse and for the top of the purse. The purse will now measure 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 inches tall. And remember I measured this down here at 1 1/8. Now this one up here is measured at 4 1/2. So I folded it and I did 4 1/2 all the way across. Now using your seam gauge, you can fold over and then finger press it and then take it to your iron and iron it. I also have a product that I like using every now and then. It's called Press Perfect by Joan Hawley of the Clover Group. And this is a ruler that you can use with your iron. So the premise of this is that you put your ruler down and you fold your fabric over to the mark that you want, and then you can iron it with the ruler in place. I will be doing a product review on this at a much later date. Otherwise, if you don't have something like this, you can always, again, like I said, use your gauge ruler. So what I've done is this one, what did I say it was? 4 1/4. It's a 4 1/4 overlap. It'll overlap your zipper right now because it's still the raw edge, but once we put the half inch seam allowance, it'll take it up like this and your zipper will be shown. So the next thing I want to show you is that I have a hook and loop closure. I'm going to be using white for this project. The soft part will go up at the top flap, and the hard, rough, loopy part, I think this is what it is, will go down at the bottom. So what I'm going to do is, the purse measures 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 across, unfinished. I cut this hook and loop to 6 1/2 inches. So I know I want to make sure that it's evenly placed So it should be about 7/8 of an inch on each side. It's not. Let's see if it's that way. Let's see what we've got here. Okay, I have to move it up just a bit to measure it there and to measure it here, and that's about the spot I'm going to use. I'm going to be using my friction pen to draw a line here so I know where to place my hook and loop. And to use as a reference, I looked over here and I almost measured it in between, almost measured in between the ribbon and the zipper. So what I'm going to do here is I'm probably going to measure it from the edge of the zipper to about here is about half, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5/8. So it's going to measure at 5/8. I'm going to measure it at 5/8, I think. I want to do that. So I'm going to put marks right here. What 5/8 would be all the way across. This friction pen, when you put heat to it, the markings go away. So I'm not worried that I've got ugly blue lines that I can barely see on here. All right, let me turn this and redo it. I'm measuring 5/8. Let me do it this way. I'm measuring 5/8 from the zipper, top of the zipper, to right here, right here, right here. There we go. And that's where the bottom of my zipper is going to go. I don't want to use pins for this, so I'm going to go ahead and use my fabric tack glue. I actually don't even know where I got this from or who makes it. I can look it up to find out. Again, I'm using the rough part of the hook and loop. I'm going to measure it like this, and I'm going to I'm going to put glue on the back piece like this. I have the glue onto the loop part, and I'm going to match it up. Basting glue. Match it up. Sorry about my head. Press it in place, and see, now it's in place. So now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew close to the edge all the way around to put it permanently onto the bag. So let's go to the machine. Okay, again, we're going to be sewing very close to the edge. For my purposes, I'm going to use the edge of the tape, or the edge of the hook and loop, to the edge of the inside of my foot. That gives me a nice seam allowance. I'm going to sew very slowly to make sure that I don't make a mistake and that I don't sew into the rough part of this section of the hook and loop or off of the edge of the tape. Sorry about my head. Right close to the edge. I think I'm going to take one more stitch. And there we go. We're at the edge again. Got to make sure that we don't sew the bottom of our bag into what we're working on. Okay. Looks like I don't have my thread in place. Oh, nope, I don't. Let's see, where did it leave off? And it made a big mess back here, as you can see. Made a big super mess back here. Let me see if I could fix this without turning off the camera. There's one piece. Here's another piece. Let me rethread my machine. Get all these little threads out of the way. Let's see if I can rethread the machine in maybe 2 tries. Yes, eureka. Okay. So let me see where this ended up at. I'm actually going to pull the thread out. Let's see if I have enough to make a knot in the back here. Sorry for the error. Sorry. Let's see how much. Alright, I'm just going to sew right over it. Start it right here, sew right over it. Okay, it looks like my needle, my thread's in the needle, and here we go. There you go. And we're going to go sew it all the way across. Going slowly, of course, to make sure that we stay on track. Let's turn it good. I ended in a good spot. Turn it around one more time. And there we go. Now we've got it sewn on in place. Let me make sure I pull some of this thread out so that I have a good section of it. Alright. Now we have the rough part of our hook and loop in place. Let's go back to the table. What I want to do is I want to cut off all these little threads, so I take my little snips that are used specifically for this. I don't use it to cut thread, I don't use it to cut anything else. These are snips. I did treat myself to these snips. I spent a little bit more than I should have. I believe these particular snips were 25 bucks, but that was something that I bought for myself, either as a Christmas present or birthday present or just because present. These are several years old, and I've had them for a long time, and they still remain very sharp. These are my little snips. I'm sure you can find them cheaper, but because I love purple, I wanted to get purple ones. So let's get back to our bag here. And we've got it placed in the direction that we want with the top flap over, as you can see. Now what I want to do is I want to put the soft portion onto my lining, and I don't want to sew it through the entire purse because I think that looks ugly when you sew it, and you see the sew mark right there. So I'm actually going to sew it onto the lining and the foam backing. Oh, my foam backing's not big enough. Hot diggity dog. Alright, well, I'm going to sew it onto the foam lining then. To the lining. So what I want to do is I want to put together my lining with my fabric piece. Like this. And then we're going to fold it at the fold. Right there. And we're going to fold it at the fold right here. See, just like that. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a marker Actually, what we're going to do is we're going to take our seam gauge and measure where I fold right here. See the edge? And I'm going to measure it out. It measures out to 7/8. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this around. I'm going to pull it apart from the front side. I'm going to measure 7/8. And I'm going to go ahead and mark it. 7/8. 7/8. Remember, this is a friction pen and the marks iron off. They won't be permanent. Now remember we said that our was about 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch. So I want to make the marking right here on this side. And now I want to make it on this side. Somehow that doesn't look right. Let's see what I did here. No, that doesn't look right. Absolutely not, it does not look right. Oh, I know why. Because it's supposed to be this way. Sorry, I'm even confusing myself. And sorry, I don't mean to be confusing everybody. When you're working, when you're making something up. All right, so what we want to do is we want to put our item like this. So we're putting the top of the soft part of the hook and loop to the bottom of the line. So now we can take this apart. That's all I needed to do. So again, I'm going to place some glue onto the bottom underside of this, the back side. This is tacky glue. This is not permanent. Tacky glue. Oop, I'm almost running out of this. Tacky glue, it's not permanent. Going to make sure that it's on the bottom. Place it down as close to the line as possible. There's that. And now it's in place, you see right here. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sew it all the way across. And I'll come back to you once I've got it done. So before I go ahead and sew on that second half of the hook and loop, I wanted to show you that I don't know why I short-ended the batting or interfacing, in this is foam interfacing for this purse. So I don't like to waste any of my fabric, nor I don't like to waste fabric, and I don't like to waste interfacing or batting or anything like that. So I do save the pieces. So what I did was I cut one of the pieces to size to match this, and I'm going to hand stitch it together. Or if you have a machine that has a zigzagger, you can zigzag it together. This particular machine that I'm using right now is only a straight stitch because it is a professional machine, and it'll take too long for me to set up my other machine. I'd have to clear out a space because I have a limited space in where I'm sewing right now. So I'm just gonna attach these together. I don't overlap them, I lay them side by side. Because this is foam, it's going to take a little bit longer. I do this with my batting all the time. I sew pieces together, especially if it's a smaller section. Of course, if it's a big section like a quilt, I will actually cut the piece to size. But if it's a small item like this, or a coin purse, or pot holders, or coasters, I'll sew the pieces together because I'm thrifty like that. Alright, let me finish sewing this and I'll get back to you and we'll go on. Okay, so now I have the foam in place. It's been sewn together right here. Nobody's really going to notice it. And now what I want to do is I want to sew this in place with the foam backing. So I'm going to go to the machine, I'm going to do it, and I'll come back and show you what it looks like. So now we have our second part of the hook and loop attached to the lining. So you can see with the foam backing, I actually put some tacking glue at the bottom so that the fabric wouldn't be flopping around. Before we put these pieces together, the very last thing I want to do is I want to attach my strap to my outside of the bag. It will be easier to do that in this manner than trying to do it after you have attached the liner to the fabric. So this is the front, and as you know, we've already ironed it to kind of mark where we're folding the bag. So what I need to do is get my two straps, or my one strap, and it's going to go in back. What I want to do is I want to measure it about an inch and a half, and I'm going to fold it. Oh, here we go. This is what I was looking for. Inch and a half, and I'm going to fold it like this. Same thing to this side. Mark it about an inch and a half, and then finger press it. Like this. Really nice and hard and tight. I'm going to lift the flap up and the bottom up. And if you can see the fold, let's see if I can get you closer. You can see the fold right here. At the fold where I made it 1.5 inches, I'm going to put it in about 1.5 inches so that when the bag is finished, it'll be 1 inch from the edge. So the outside edge will be right there. And you could put 1 pin into it. Then I'm going to match this fold with this fold, 1.5 inches from the outside. In this manner, and I'm going to throw a pin in it to make sure it stays in place. Now let's fold up the bag. Let's pan out so you can see. You can see that I've got the straps on here like this, pinned in place. You can see where it folds. There you go. Oops. It looks like it's even, about 1.5 inches, Sorry. We can take our ruler, our gauge right there, 1.5 inches. Our gauge right there, 1.5 inches. This is a little bit higher, so we'll move it up. And I will repin it. It should measure 1.5 inches. There you go. Now we've got 2 straps that we're going to attach. So let's go to the machine so you can see how they get attached. So what I've done is I've measured from the edge in 1 inch, and that's where I'm going to sew. I want to sew a perfect 1/4 inch on the edges. I'm going to sew over the 1/4 inch top stitching, and 1 inch from the edge, in, I'm going to sew. So I'm going to, I have my needle in the up position. I'm going to place it into the fabric and the strap. I want to make sure everything is nice and even. I'm not going to backstitch because I'm going to finish off the stitch after I make my X. So I'm going to go across very slowly, down, lift it, make sure I don't have any of the strap underneath my sewing. Follow the stitch line all the way down. So this is going to have to be done in slow, practically slow motion. Lift, pivot, make sure you don't have any additional fabric or the strap underneath. Stitch, stitch, stitch slowly because you're trying to go over the stitch. One more, there you go. Lift it, pivot your fabric again, or your item, stitch, and you're going to end up where the 1 inch marking is. You're going to make an X because that will secure your strap onto your bag. You pivot your fabric and your material to make that X. There you go. Then you're going to pivot the material and everything so that you're double stitching along the bottom and not the side. The bottom of the strap needs the additional stitching. So you go across. One more. Pivot so that you can close up your X. make sure you try to get the line as straight as possible. I think I can do one more. Yes. Pivot one last time, and you're going to double stitch or place an additional stitch at the top where you first started sewing. It reinforces everything. Now if you want to back stitch to finish off your stitch, you can. I only put 3. Now let's just pull it out. And let's show you how it turned out. So there's my strap with all little strings on it. I started at the top, one across, down, one across, up, then I turned it, made the first part of my X, one across, made the second part of my X, and then finished off at top. Bottom and top are reinforced to make this strap pretty sturdy. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the other strap. Only this time I'm going to do it a little bit faster, and you just follow along with me. Again, I'm going to look for my mark, my 1-inch mark. I got to make sure I don't pull out the thread and it unthreads itself. There we go. Alright, let's put it in. Got to make sure that the strap is nice and straight. Want to make sure that I am not going to sew any extra fabric or the strap underneath. Again, we want to do this slow because we want to make sure we pay attention to what we're sewing. We don't have to back stitch this because the stitch will be locked with all the stitching that we're doing. One more, lift, pivot, make sure you got everything nice and straight because it's not in place yet. You want to make sure everything's nice and straight. You're stitching over the top stitching of the strap. I think that's good. No, one more. Alright, up. Stitch, 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 stitch. Yeah, I think that's okay. I'm going to go up. Now we're going to turn this, go corner to corner, make your first part of your X. Turn it. Oh, no, I think I need to add one more stitch. Oh, yeah. We're going to go across the bottom. Remember, this is going to give it additional security. Now we're going to complete our X. Good. And now we're going to reinforce the top. If you want to back stitch on the top, you can. And we are done. So let me show you this one, how it turned out. See? All right, let's go to the table so we can see. All right, we're at the table, and what I need to do is I need to cut off all these extra little threads. And I'm going to use my snips. In some of these YouTube videos, you'll see that the sewers have their snips tied on to their machine with a ribbon or string. Now, because I use these snips both here at the cutting mat and at the sewing machine, I didn't think that would be good for me because I'd probably be ripping the ribbon, even if I made a long ribbon to reach from the machine to here. I like to be able to pick them up and move them around like as you can see. All right, what we are going to do now is this very final sewing step. Well, no, the second to the final sewing step. We've got our strap placed. We're going to fold it nicely into the inside of the bag. I'm going to fold it very nicely into the bag. You don't want to pin anything because you don't want to end up poking yourself as you're pulling it through. So you want to be very careful how you place this part. Let me move this back just a bit. You want to make sure that you are placing the correct size. A way to know is that you've got your ends of your straps up here. So we're going to put right sides together. You're going to match right sides together. Right sides together. There might be a little distortion from the fabric because of the sewing that you're doing, but for the most part it should equal out. I'm going to be using my clips, so I'm going to clip here at the top. Now let's just move it a little bit. I'm going to clip here at the top. Again, I'm going to put another clip at the top. I'm going to match the sides. I'll take a little handful right here at the side. I'm going to clip it this side. Remember, you want to make sure that you're not in the way of your strap's not going to be in the way of your sewing. I'm actually going to put additional clips because I want to make sure that my sewing turns out pretty decent. I am lining up everything. Here. I'm lining up everything here. I'm going to turn this around. Grab a few more of my clips. I want to make sure that I have no interruptions at the top or at the bottom of my bag. I'm probably going to double stitch over here by the zipper. I want to open up my zipper a little bit so that I don't get it caught on the zipper head. I'll put one on this side, and I'll put one on this side. Grab a couple of more of these puppies. A couple of more. All right, I've got everything in place. Now what I want to do is I want to put a mark, and I want to put a mark that's as big as my hand. So let's say I'm going to do a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-inch opening. I'm going to put a mark here and a mark here. Now I'm going to give it a 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around, starting from here and ending here. I think I'm going to start here, go all the way around and end here. So let's go to the machine. All right, I have my project under the needle. The needle is in the up position because I'm not starting at an edge. I'm starting at one of the marks I made. So I'm going to hand put my needle down in the down position, and I'm going to take out my first clip. I'm going to start sewing, and I'm going to back stitch so that I don't rip out the stitches when I'm turning my bag over. Now we're going to continue sewing and sewing, following the 1/2 inch markings on my machine. Now I'm coming up to the zipper part. And I'm going to go ahead and backstitch because I want to give it a good reinforcement. And I'm going to turn at the 1/2 inch mark that I scratched into my machine. I'm going to do this very slowly because I don't want to mess up. Turn, and I'm right at the 1/2 inch. Go ahead and take out my next clip, and I'm going to go ahead and sew. I'm going to try not to go fast because I don't want to mess up on this. I actually can put the clips over here. And I'm watching to make sure I don't go over. Let me hand turn it one more to give it a 1/2 inch. Let's go ahead and sew. We're going to backstitch onto the zipper because I want to reinforce that zipper. And we're going to continue sewing, pulling out the clips. Oh, that was Baxter in the background. Sorry, he's barking at the people outside. Shh. Be a good boy. Pull out the next clip. Oh yeah, you're such a good boy. Alright. We're at the 1/2 inch mark. Maybe one more twirl. Alright. Pull out this clip. And we're at the top part of the bag. Trying not to get my head in the rear view. Let me do one more. Pull this out. Backstitch right here so that the stitches don't come out when I'm pulling it. Actually, what I want to do is I want to reinforce up here because I moved it a little and it didn't do the full 1/2 inch. So all I'm going to do is mark right here where I made the turn. I know the stitch is right. Back stitch. Alright, I fixed that little mistake. There you go. Now it's going to be nice and straight. Okay, let's go to... Alright, what I want to do is, first of all, I need to clip off all these little strings because me personally, they annoy me and they get in my way. I pay attention to the little strings more than what I'm supposed to be doing, so I get rid of all my little strings before I go on to what I'm supposed to be doing next. I generally don't show you that I'm pulling off the little strings because I don't want to waste your time. But I thought I would show you this time. Alright, so now what I want to do is I want to clip the corners because I want to have nice, clean corners. Nice, clean corners. I want to make sure that I don't cut into the stitching because if I cut into the stitching, my corner is going to open up. And one more corner. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off the tails of my zipper now that it's been sewn in place. Let's cut this end over here. There we go. Now, here's the open part where I left it open. I didn't sew it. It should be big enough for me to squeeze. It should be big enough for me to squeeze my hand in. I'm going to tuck it in, pull, tuck it in, pull. And you see I've got part of it pulled out. Let me stick my hand in, go all the way up to the corner. Oops, strap's in my way. Go up to the corner and pull it. That's why you make the spot big enough for your hand to go through. I'm getting poked by the hook and loop. And I'm starting to think, oh my gosh, I left the pin in there. But it's the hook and loop that's poking me. If you secured all of your stitching, you don't have to be worried that when you're doing this and you're yanking and pulling gently, that you're going to be ripping out any stitches, because in all honesty, you're not. Alright, so now, let's see. I need to get my chopstick. I don't know what happened to my chopstick. While I'm looking for it, I'm just going to poke out the edges. Alright, well, I don't know where my chopstick went. So let me just use my fingers to poke out the edges. Put my hand in, poke out the edge. I'm not doing such a good job here, am I? There we go, poke out the edge, but not poke it out so much that you're ripping the threads. Let's come over here, poke out the edge. Now let's go on this side and poke out the edge. Poke out the edge. And take my hand out, and now you've got your really cute bag. All I need to do is iron it so we can get the seams all straight away. Got this right here. And let me just show you how it's going to look. Here's the fold. This way, and then it comes down like this, and there's your bag. But now just got to iron it out. We have to close this side over here. Actually, it'll get closed when we sew everything together, but I'm going to iron it. Okay, I found my chopstick. All I had to do was move an article, sticking my hand in, and I'm actually going to poke it to make sure that I have a really nice poked corners. Poke it again so you can have really nice sharp corners. Go to the other end of the purse. Poke it again so you can have nice sharp corners. On this end with nice sharp corners. Alright, so the first thing I want to do is I want to press all of this. And have on the highest setting, because I am using 100% cotton. I want my iron to be nice and hot because I want it to actually press everything into place. And you hear me giving it shots of steam. And I'm doing it from the back side because I don't want to have the problem of the zipper melting. If it was a zipper that I might be worried about, that might melt. Let's go on this side and iron and iron and iron. Okay, now let's get the straps up that way. Let me go ahead and iron this right here. You notice I'm kind of avoiding the open spot right now. I want everything else to be nicely ironed and in place before I start to finish off that edge. Okay, now I have the edge over here. Let me put this up so that you can see what I'm doing. I have the unfinished edge right here. I'm going to fold it under both the lining fabric and the outer fabric, and I'm going to give it a quick shot of steam. Okay, so I did it 3 times. I want to make sure that it stays in place. I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to make sure that I didn't overshoot. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my tacking stick. Hopefully I've got enough tacky stuff to put on here. And I'm going to rub it on. And then I'm going to close my seam so that it helps it to stay closed while I'm sewing. Alright. Nice shot. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to top stitch all the way around. Now I'm not sure if I want to top stitch the zipper or not, or if I want to leave it unstitched. Oh great, I got rid of my fold. No, there's the fold. So here it is. Here is the bag, nice and closed. Remember when I had you fold it over and it was over the zipper? Now it's just below the zipper, or just above the zipper. So I need to close this purse somehow, and how I'm going to close it is I'm going to top stitch it, and that will reinforce and close this bag. Now I need to think, do I just want to top stitch up here? No, I'm going to have to top stitch all the way through. Do I want to, well, let me get it into the machine and let me see what I want to do, because the top stitching is going to interfere with the zipper, and it's going to go across the zipper like this. So now I want to steam the zipper a little bit, and steam the zipper a little bit and give it a fold, and put it right there in the middle. Before I move this any further, what I want to do is I want to get some clips, and I want to clip these things into place. I want to make sure that when I'm sewing, I am sewing the edges perfectly even. I do not want the bottom to stick out or the top to stick out from the other edge. So you might have made a purse that's a little that is uneven on the sides, and it'll give you a little bit of extra puffiness or extra room to put things into. With the little black and yellow one, that happened, and I have a little extra room to puff it out in the back. This one, it seems to me, is going to be even exactly. So I am making sure that all the edges are even. All the way down. All the way down. My top stitching is only going to happen from this end all the way up around the top and down to the bottom on this end. I am not going to top stitch on the bottom. It will allow you to have a nice open spot. If I top stitch it, it'll have that thing, fabric stitched across like that. I would rather have it like this so that if somebody wants to put something in, they can. So let's move over to the machine so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, we're at the machine. I have my bag underneath the needle. Instead of starting at the end, I'm going to start like an inch or so inwards because I want to back stitch off and then come back on. I don't want to start my stitching at the end of my object. So put my presser foot down, 2, 3, and now I'm going to go back, off, on, and here we go. I want to make sure that I have a nice, neat line. I'm coming up to the zipper. What I'm going to have to do, what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to sew over the zipper. And I'm going to sew over the hook and loop. I didn't take that into consideration. I am now coming up to the edge. What I'm going to do here is reinforce. Go down. I'm going to be sewing over the hook and loop again. One more pull. I am not going to be sewing my straps with the 1/4 inch seam allowance. I want my straps to be loose and free. So I'm going to make sure I don't have them under the needle. And now I'm going to sew across the top. Again, using my 1/4 inch. I'm coming up to the end. Slowly stitch. There you go. I'm going to go across. I'm going to move my straps out of the way because I don't want to sew them down or into my sewing. Go across. We're coming to the point where the bag, the folded part of the bag comes. Back stitch because I want to reinforce that. Back stitch. We're going to be stitching over the zipper. All right, a little snafu. So I'm going to move this just a little so that the needle will go where it's supposed to go. I will hand send it. Okay, down. And now we can go across. Continue stitching. Back up. And we are done. We're going to finish our sewing 1 inch from the edge, as you can see here. Pull it out. I'll meet you at the table. And now we've got a very cute and adorable crossbody bag that has a hook and loop closure. The pocket is deep enough, nice enough, big enough that you can put your wallet, your cell phone. If you wear glasses, you could put glasses in there. You could put your keys in. If not, you can open up the little zipper pocket in the front and you can put your keys or your glasses into it. I really like the way this came out. It's nice and professionally finished. It doesn't have any raw seams or openings. The hook and loop is on securely, and so is your strap, as you can see. It's really nice. Now, if you notice, if we had sewn it like this, it would have been like this, and that's not what we wanted. Okay, so my name is Liz. We are at EMO's Creative Studio, where anything you create is beautiful because you created it. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Take care. Happy sewing, happy quilting. Until the next time, bye. And now we've got a very cute and adorable crossbody bag that has a hook and loop closure. The pocket is deep enough, nice enough, big enough that you can put your wallet, your cell phone. If you wear glasses, you can put glasses in there. You could put your keys in. If not, you can open up the little zipper pocket in the front and you can put your keys or your glasses into it. I really like the way this came out. It's nice and professionally finished. It doesn't have any raw seams or openings. The hook and loop is on securely, and so is your strap, as you can see. It's really nice. Now, if you notice, if we had sewn it like this, it would have been like this, and that's not what we wanted. Okay, so my name is Liz. We are at EMO's Creative Studio, where anything you create is beautiful because you created it. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Take care. Happy sewing, happy quilting. Until the next time, bye.